As Trump moves the world closer to World War III, reports of energy blackouts are coming in from places like Cuba. So, are the rumors true? Is the world heading for an energy lockdown in 2026? And what's really coming? The International Energy Agency has described the situation as the largest oil supply disruption on record, March 24th, 2026. A surge in oil prices, early signs of supply strain, and a flood of viral claims about an energy lockdown have pushed a once fringe idea into the mainstream. However, while the global energy system is under real stress, there is no coordinated plan to impose COVID-style restrictions. So they say. At its peak, maritime movement dropped dramatically, while key facilities in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar were either damaged or forced to halt operations. Now they're saying more than 50,000 U.S. troops are in the Middle East. 50,000. Now that certainly does sound like they're going to try to take Kang Island and put boots on the ground. I pray they don't, because I think that that's a death trap. So, of course the media is like, no, there's no lockdown, but they always say that with every theory that we come up with. No, the vaccines are safe. Why this feels familiar to many. The comparisons to the 1973 oil crisis and the 1979 oil crisis are not accidental. I'm too young to remember those, but they were certainly in my lifetime. So the boomers can definitely remember that crisis where people were lined up around the block trying to get
October 1973, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, imposed an oil embargo on the United States, leading to widespread fuel shortages and economic turmoil. This embargo was a direct response to U.S. support for Israel during the Yom Kippur War, a conflict that had significant geopolitical implications. The oil crisis not only disrupted daily life, but also sparked a national conversation about energy independence and economic security. Long lines at gas stations became a common sight, and the frustration of waiting for hours just to fill up a tank of gas was felt by millions of Americans. The oil crisis began when OPEC, led by Middle Eastern countries, imposed an oil embargo in response to U.S. support for Israel during the Yom Kippur War.
America just can't learn its lesson. So instead of saying, hey, we need to rethink our relationship with these Nazis, the U.S. government doubles down, decides that they're going to run OPEC and destroy 7 countries in 5 years. All right, take over 7 countries in 5 years. Because our government is the Nazis. The Bushes were Nazis. Trump, he's a Nazi. The decision we're going to war with Iraq. This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, we're going to war with Iraq. Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. So I said, well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda? He said, no. He says, there's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. And now we know that the United States government, the Bush administration, actually planted the bombs that exploded on 9/11. And there's even video of him saying it. He slips up and he says it on TV. I mean, this man's a complete degenerate. Cokehead. They're all cokeheads too. What's with the coke obsession? Why are they all cokeheads? I mean, it's such a disgusting drug. Why can't we just get some potheads in office if we're going to have drug addicts? Why can't they just be stoners, I mean, I'll be the first one to say it. I think the burners were right. I think Bernie Sanders was the least evil option back in the day. Soft socialism is a lot better than freaking Nazis. Anyway, we planted the bombs on 9/11. America did. And that's been proven. It's been proven. So that was an excuse for war with Iraq. And now we have an excuse for war with Iran. Anyway, so I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, "I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today. And he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq, and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it to me." And I saw him a year or so ago, and I said, "You remember that?" He said, "Sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you." So let's get back to today and these alleged energy crisis blackouts and supposed carbon credit soft intro. What do other world leaders say? Narendra Modi described the developments as concerning, but stressed that India's fuel supply remains steady, pointing to expanded reserves and a broader network of import resources. However, during his recent address in the Indian parliament, he said, just like during COVID-19, we need to be ready again. So that's not a good sign. People in India are starting to suspect the same thing. Now, Donald Trump, what he says, we can't believe. Across Europe and Asia, officials are focusing on coordinated reserve releases and short-term conservation messaging rather than restrictive policies. So, is there a global lockdown? Just real quick, look at this article. Naive Trump may have missed naive Trump may have missed to consider Iran conflict could cause immense oil crisis, ex-CIA director says. And that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. They did all these studies back in the 80s. They know exactly what will result from taking actions like this. This isn't our first round with Iran. This isn't. And everybody wants to say that he's stupid. But we have all of this information from, I actually have it. Hold on. So when we search for Europe blackout, we get, let's see here, European Union blackout countries 2026. 5 countries with the most blackouts. All right. It's probably unrelated. Yeah, it seems completely unrelated. They're all in the teens, and not seeing any 2026 here. Trading system. They're bringing back the climate action, friends. No, we didn't see the last of that nonsense. Some countries are supposedly going full retard, and if it's happening over in Britain or Europe, it should be here in New York or California within 6 months. Rise in carbon prices, trends and projections. Let's see, is there anything more recent? They just don't want to share information. Europe scales back climate goals to ease Iran war energy. The European Union may be forced to scale back its flagship climate policies. So what are these flagship climate policies? MIT Sloan, great. Pathways Project, Harvard and MIT. You know this is going to be bad. Joint initiative between Harvard and MIT dedicated to identifying and advancing innovations in global climate policies and institutions. Existing frameworks, including the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement, have established an important foundation for climate action but are not sufficient to manage the risks of a changing climate. With financial support from the Salada Institute for Climate and Sustainability, Weatherhead Research Cluster on Global Climate Policy, and MIT Climate Project, GCPP puts forward ideas and policy proposals that complement the UN FCCCCCCC and address critical gaps in trade, finance, security. Strengthen carbon markets. Talk of a global carbon pricing scheme grows louder ahead of COP30. Want us to buy that too? It'll be interesting to see what Trump does, because you know his billionaire base is all for decimating our habitat and, ripping off the public. However, are they going to have to pay for the energy that they're using for these data centers, etc.? Or are we just going to have to pay for it all? Because so far it looks like we're paying for it. It looks as though they build the infrastructure and then we pay for it. So how could Trump make that work here in the U.S.? I don't think he can. And as far as states go, well, he certainly worked hard at getting all these corrupt, fake MAGA into office, didn't he? And I do believe that New York City, that mayor, the Zohan guy, Mamdani, is a friend of Trump's. I think he is part of this global pedophile network because of his mother. She's in the Epstein files. She hung out with G-Max and Jeff Epp. The reason why we can't have any of these climate change policies in the United States is because these industries, these grooming industries and these New World Order industries are the biggest polluters in the world. We'll never be able to protect our environment. Our country is just going to get filthier and filthier. We're just going to keep getting sicker and sicker. And the retards in America are going to be scratching their heads, wondering why their kids aren't thriving any longer as they go to the polls to vote Republican or Democrat, all while not being able to clean up our environments because of these data centers and these tech billionaires and these greedy politicians. All right, let's look into the Cuba blackout then. Cuba blackout 2026 causes impact and ongoing power crisis explained. Cuba faces a major power grid collapse in March, triggering nationwide blackouts. Explore causes like fuel shortages, aging infrastructure, U.S. sanctions, and its global implications. Its power grid collapsed once again and left the entire nation in darkness for the third time in the month of March. The outage highlights the deepening energy crisis in Cuba, which is driven by aging infrastructure, fuel shortages, and geopolitical tensions. I bet the aging infrastructure is like just maybe a tiny part. So why are they putting that first? The country's aging electricity infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. Severe fuel shortage. Yeah, I mean, that could cause blackouts, right? If there's no fuel. Currently produces only about 40% of its fuel needs, and they are heavily relying on imports. So they're going to have to come up with better ways. We all are. And I think personally that this is all part of the big conspiracy to crash the petrodollar and get us on the global currency, blockchain cryptocurrency. It's Cryptogate, baby. It's what Jeffrey Epstein outlines in his emails with nations in the Middle East and Ehud Barak and all those other players in the game. That's what I think this is about. I think it's intentional because we've had the intel reports for a very long time. Trump knew exactly what would happen. Okay, this is March 2026. Net zero by 2050. I'll be amazed if we're still here in 2050. That sounds like that'll be way past Jesus' return at this point. Okay, so it looks like they started doing this back in May of 2025. Highways bosses to remove 145 miles of lighting on 2 major motorways in Net Zero Drive. Some of the busiest sections of motorway in UK impacted, and it follows a previous scheme which stopped because accidents arose. Well, yeah, duh. Yeah, so they won't get stricter with these data centers and industries by saying, hey, listen, no, you need to move to solar. You need to go 100% renewable because the people need the fuel. They need, the electricity for public safety. No. They just turn off the lights on highways. People crash and burn. Whatever. They got to do what they got to do, right? They got to protect their base. It's all about the base, Let's see what else we can find. Yeah, so this was 4 years ago, government asked Britons to turn off lights and turn down thermostats over winter energy shortage fears. So they've been doing stuff like this for a while over there. Dim the street lights to save money. Yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of information right now on the topic of blackouts, so I'll keep my eyes open and make sure that they're not just recycling news from like 4 years ago, because sometimes they do that. This is back in January. They're worried about data centers. And again, why are our oil prices going up if we have enough oil to sustain ourselves? I think we're ranked number 1 for oil production. So what's going on? Do we have an energy crisis because of these data centers, and not to mention the particle accelerators that they're putting up all over the country? Is this like trying to cover up the fact that they're going through our oil reserves? These tech billionaires? So why are our prices going up? Why would the Middle East energy crisis affect us? So by the end of year 2026, we are projecting that around 10 gigawatts of new IT load will have been added to the global data center world. specifically to run generative AI workloads and adjacent workloads, but definitely centered on generative AI. This means that these 10 gigawatts or so load, we are talking about anywhere between 13 to 15 million GPUs and accelerators deployed globally. So what's really going on? Ranked the top crude oil producers in 2025. So this was published 2 weeks ago on March 17th, 2026. The United States. 13.58 million barrels per day, followed by Russia with just 9.87, and Saudi Arabia, 9.51. And then we have Canada, Iraq. I see for sure Saudi Arabia's crude oil production has been inhibited by this war. Same with Iraq. That's probably why they're bombing Iraq, because they have absolutely nothing to do with this otherwise. And then we have Iran, UAE, Kuwait, and although Kazakhstan is on the board of peace, they're not currently involved in any of the bombings. So, the world's oil hasn't been disrupted that much. What is really going on? How much oil do we use per day? U.S. oil consumption, 1965 to 2025. United States oil reserves, 83 billion, almost 84 billion. That's just eighth in the world. Production, 22.8 million, number one in the world. Consumption, 20.4. So yes, we do make enough oil to provide for ourselves. So why is the price of oil going up? So in regards to reserves, Venezuela, which we took, Saudi Arabia, which is an ally, Iran, which we are trying to take, Canada, ally, Iraq, looks like we're trying to take that as well. We're bombing them, destroying their energy infrastructure. UAE, ally, Kuwait, ally, us, and then, of course, Russia. And Russia has been very patient so far, but they do financially benefit from this war, so maybe that's why. I think it was key in taking Venezuela. I think that was the first step in this war. People just didn't put the dots together until now. Yeah, Venezuela was key in this global energy crisis, this manufacture crisis that's going on right now. I mean, I think that's what this is about. Taking over the world's energy supply, forcing a change. Crashing the petrodollar and forcing blockchain cryptocurrency so that they can commit fraud on a much grander level like never even imaginable in the past, right? Because now they can rob from the world. It's not just the U.S. Federal Reserve that they can steal from, which they were doing, according to the Epstein files. It's going to be a global market that they steal from now. And in order to get this cryptocurrency, you got to crash the petrodollar. And again, this is in the Epstein files. So this is what I think's going on. What do you think's going on? I was just reading the breaking news, but that's not really breaking news. I think that came out last week. Yeah, they're going to destroy their desalination plants over in Iran and probably Iraq as well. And they're doing that because they don't want them to have any clean drinking water. Because if they don't have drinking water, then the people are going to go bonkers. right? Just think about Syria. Rubio details how the Trump administration will control Venezuela's oil money. January 28th, 2026. The Trump administration soon will allow Venezuela to sell oil now subject to U.S. sanctions, with the revenue initially dedicated to basic government services such as policing and healthcare and subject to Washington's oversight. The United States will retain control in the short term to ensure the oil revenue is used to stabilize Venezuela. I don't believe that. I think they're taking control to get rid of the petrodollar. That's what I think. He noted that the interim leaders of the South American country will submit a budget every month of what they need funded. The funds from that oil sales will be deposited into an account that we will have oversight over, Rubio said, adding that the U.S. Treasury would control the process. Venezuela, he said, will spend that money for the benefit of the Venezuelan people. Right. So now we're stealing Venezuela's money, the oil and their money generated from that oil. U.S. military boards another oil tanker in Indian Ocean after tracking it from the Caribbean. I'm surprised they didn't just blow it out of the waters. In an effort to target illicit oil connected to Venezuela. It's not illicit. So it looks like we're running Venezuela now. And they're trying to get oil to people in need. And we're stopping them. It's absolutely disgusting. Because people are going to die because of this. But what exactly is this? Is this Israel trying to control OPEC? Or, the greater and little Satan trying to crash the petro and turn to New World Order cryptocurrency? Or is this just another pedophile president with dementia? And Israel's taking advantage because of his Jewish roots and connections. I'm starting to think we might have a perfect storm on our hands, and I would love to know what you think. Now they're saying it's worse than the 70s. I don't believe that for a second because we're producing so much more oil. So I think that a lot of this is hype. That's going to lead to, oh my gosh, the petrodollar is so unstable. We need to move to blockchain cryptocurrency. Say all the criminal pedophiles because it's basically the dark web of money. The biggest losers. Across the poor world, the third Gulf War has set off a scramble for energy. In Nepal, long queues for cooking gas have forced rationing. In Sri Lanka, firms have been urged to shut on Wednesdays to conserve. In Pakistan, schools have been closed and universities moved online. Households and governments are preparing for what the head of the IMF has called the unthinkable. And for these nations who don't produce enough oil to sustain themselves, this is unthinkable. And maybe it's going to be a push if they're going to crash the petrodollar. They're going to move on to a different source of energy. Is it going to be this fusion reactor? Nuclear fusion, plasma fusion? I guess we're going to have to wait and see. So, what to believe, what not to believe. The Iran oil crisis is the worst energy shock ever recorded. World leaders aren't ready, says IEA chief. And this is Faith Birol, Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. He speaks at the National Press Club in Australia. And you can't help but wonder how many people are in on this. Jeffrey Epstein is still controlling things on behalf of the Rothschilds, and this was his plan, to crash the petrodollar and to get us on this blockchain cryptocurrency so that they could steal from the world. So who all is involved? I'd say everybody on the Board of Peace, everybody that Jeff Epstein was communicating with, who happened to be on the Board of Peace, and Trump's allies in this Iran war. They're all in on this. We're not. 4 days ago. Could this energy crisis be worse for the global economy than COVID? Well, that's what they want. So who is this? University of Oxford. Oxford's super corrupt, so they probably know what's going on too. Despite reports of negotiations between the U.S. and the Iranian regime, the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed to most oil tankers, with only a small number of vessels being allowed to pass. The result is a loss of roughly 11 million barrels per day. And how much do we produce? 13.58. That's wild. This represents just over 10% of global supply. You can go on to read that if you'd like. I think I have a pretty good idea who's involved. They're just sending more troops, you guys. This isn't going to stop anytime soon. And we're going to see the death toll jump drastically very, very soon. Very soon. Trump is boasting an unlimited weapons stockpiles. That probably means that we're running out. He's probably going through our arsenal. He's making us very vulnerable to attack. That's what I believe. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I believe with the former CIA director, John Brennan. We can't believe a word that comes out of Trump's mouth. And at this point, Iranian leadership is more credible than our own. It is such a shame. And the biggest losers in the end, I think, are going to be Americans and Israelis. And all the Jews. All the real Jews and all the real Christians out there. Zionists. Their reign is coming to an end. And it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be great, but it's not going to be pretty.
Parliamentary Speaker, Director Brennan, said that there have been no negotiations between the two countries. I am confused how the President of the United States can credibly stand up there before the cameras under the wing of Air Force One and claim the conversations have been had that apparently haven't been had. And I'm also wary of taking the word of Iran. Like, they are an authoritarian regime who's known to lie. But, I'm confused. What is going on? Help me. Calm me down.
Well, I tend to believe Iran more than I do Donald Trump, because he could not acknowledge the truth, even when it is, he's slapped in the face with it repeatedly. And it's clear that, he is flailing right now. He's trying to figure out how he's going to get out of this debacle that he has created. And so he's going to make these claims about negotiations, that the Iranians now are sending signals that they really want to make a deal, and indicates that they're going to make a deal on our terms. I don't think anything close to the truth in that statement. They may be talking to people indirectly, and we know that the Turks and the Egyptians are trying to find some way to mediate this problem. So there could be some members, distant members of parliament that are out there that are speaking individually, but I don't believe there's anybody speaking authoritatively right now on behalf of the Iranian government with the Trump administration.
$6.7 million barrels per day of Gulf oil production now shut in. Energy Aspects figures that the Hormuz-related outages will peak at 10 million barrels per day, with total OPEC crude oil production now down 7 million to 22.3 million. That's 7% of the world's daily crude oil diet of 100 million barrels per day. The United States, as the world's biggest oil and natural gas producer, is somewhat insulated from supply shocks. So then why are our prices going up? We're not going to have shortages. We produce far more than we use. So why are our prices going up? Oil, it's self-replenishing. It's the second most abundant liquid on earth. Why are our prices going up? That's why we have this infrastructure. This infrastructure that we have, that we've all invested heavily into, is supposed to provide real security. So why are our prices going up? Other countries don't have that comfort. Our prices are probably going up because they're unrelated. These are probably data surges. They're also building CERNs, Hadron Colliders, in New York and other places in this country. And I guarantee you we're paying for all of this. We're paying for all of it. That's probably why our prices are going up. It's like a mask. It's a disguise. It's a ruse. There's absolutely no reason for our oil prices to be going up. Myanmar, Vietnam, the Philippines source upwards of 80% of their oil via cargoes that pass through Hormuz, and only have about a month of oil in storage before they'll run out or need to find alternate supplies. Situation is acute in Singapore, which usually receives 680,000 of Trans-Hormuz crude oil and just has 40 days of inventory cover. Thailand is in only a little better position with 50 days of cover on its 400,000 BPDs from Hormuz. Taiwan, South Korea, India, Indonesia, Japan, and China. It's in order of how many days of reserves they have left. So a month. These countries have a month. 2 months. Taiwan, 3 months. South Korea, 2 months. India, and the rest have quite a bit more. So how long is Trump going to draw this out? If he's going to draw this out for another couple of months or longer, however is needed to crash the petro and make these changes, these New World Order globalist changes, then we're going to see a tremendous amount of death in this reset just by disrupting oil supplies. They don't even need to manufacture another virus, although they probably will. So if they're going to crash our economy too, they're going to jack up food prices even higher. They're going to blame this, and it's going to be a lie. Everything that they blame on rising costs, if they blame it on the petro, they're lying. And that's just going to be all part of their agenda. So we have to kind of see how this is going to play out. We should look to Minnesota, New York, California, because those are like, you know, key globalist states. We also have like Wisconsin, is it? They've been quiet though lately. Pennsylvania. So yeah, let's pay attention to these globalist states. Let's look at New York first. Yeah, so here, listen to this. The brewing energy storm threatening New York's grid. Come on. Childcare and housing have long been the key pain points on affordability in New York, but another big thing has been on the minds of Governor Hochul, whatever, and residents statewide lately. Energy costs have jumped as a result of the U.S. and Israel. Yeah, attack on Iran. Nope. Big fat lies. Now, we know that she is wicked as hell, and she is building a large collider in her state. So can you imagine the energy cost of a collider? Can you? Oh, this is interesting too. It talks about how she is rolling back on the climate change. Looks like rollback aspects of the landmark 2019 state climate law intended to, among other things, decarbonize the state's energy grid. So yeah, hello, you guys figuring out that you can't trust the Democrats either? They're all liars. They're all in on this. So that was a money-making scheme. And I wanted to fake appease the base. And now that we're up and running with the data centers and the CERN, mini CERN, then they're going to roll back because it was all just a lie. It was all just a ruse. All right. So it looks like they're throwing 2024 news at me. That's ridiculous. U.S. CERN. Though Governor Hochul claims that this electron-ion collider won't be ready until 2033, you can't help but wonder what they're doing and how much energy they're consuming in the meantime. The money will go towards the design and construction of the first 4 buildings of 14 that will house the accelerator. New York's part of the project will last through 2027. While New York is kicking in the initial $100 million investment, the Department of Energy will fund all the scientific and technical components through money from the federal government. I wonder if New Yorkers agreed to that when they voted for her. I wonder if she even campaigned about it. Or if she's, you know, just like the rest of them, like Trump. They just kind of add this stuff in as they go along, right? With the AI and the data centers. Trump didn't campaign on that. Nope. He campaigned on locking up pedophiles and closing the border to make America safer. That's what he campaigned on. It's just unbelievable. And I have entered words into this search so many different ways, but I cannot find how much energy is required to operate an electron-ion collider. It's really weird. This is my 5th search. No matter what I type in, I can't get an answer. We know how much energy data centers use. January 1st, how much electricity does a data center use? See how easy that is? Look at that. In 2023, data centers alone consumed 176 terawatt hours of electricity, equivalent to powering 16 million homes for an entire year. It's disgusting. And I see all these streamers on YouTube using AI in their searches for information. It's absolutely appalling. I don't watch any of them anymore. If I see anybody using AI on YouTube or anywhere else, I ban them. They're banned because they're a part of the problem. Saved by the bell. I will definitely keep on top of this subject, and if there are any new developments in regards to blackouts or this carbon credit, whatever they're doing, I'll certainly inform you. You have a great night. Mysterious blackout hits California as Iran cyber attack fears grow. Power outage plunged San Diego, Orange counties into chaos on Thursday night. I don't know about that. I think they only lost power for 2 hours, but they haven't stated why. This started, it happened 4 days ago. So the investigation's been going on for 4 days, and they still aren't going to say why. Experts claim that the FBI recently informed California law enforcement agencies that Iranian drone strikes on the West Coast could be in retaliation for the ongoing war with the Islamic Republic. Newsom has yet to make any announcement regarding the blackout. And this is poweroutage.com. If you're interested in this topic of blackouts, just go on and check it out. It'll show you where, percentages, what have you, of all national power outages. Looks all right for now, though. So who knows what's going on.